Hi, guys. I'm in my daughter's bedroom today, school holidays, hiding out. I'm just going to give everyone a moment to get into their links and jump in. I hope everyone's had a nice weekend. What a start to a Monday to learn all about your little one's sleep and get their sleep issues resolved. That's the goal. So just quickly, I am Tara. Many of you might know if you follow on socials, I own the Gentle Sleep Specialist. I have worked as a sleep consultant for the last 12 years, for little ones primarily from 3 months, but newborns as well, all the way through to 9 years of age. So when they tell you they'll just grow out of it, don't always believe them. We want to make changes where changes are needed. So I will get to some questions at the end. We've got the next just over an hour together to go through everything. And in this time, we're going to be talking about settling. We're going to be talking about frequent waking, napping, toddler bedtimes, all the things as we go along as well. So I'm going to put some things up on the board so you'll be able to see as we go along. I am a visual learner, so hopefully that'll help as well. And I used to be a nanny. I literally have been obsessed with babies and children like since forever. And I started off nannying, and then I went into nursing. And when I finished university, I went into pediatric nursing, and that was incredible until I had my daughter, and she was CMPI, reflux. Like, she was so unsettled. At 4 months, I ended up getting her sleep sorted, and it changed everything. Literally, her reflux, her colic, her irritability, trapped wind. Like, I'm not saying sleep sorts at all, but it, and in so many cases now, I've done this for 12 years, worked with families. It's transformative for their rest and digest, for their tummy, for all the things. So that is my aim for you guys, is to get easier settles, easier bedtimes, and better sleep throughout. And one thing that I will say is that I wholeheartedly believe that as parents, our job is to recognize when something's not working and make the change, even when it feels uncomfortable, even when we're not sure, how to do it to begin with. It really is a part of that resourcefulness of being able to make change, and recognize when something's not working. It's so important. And this is just the first time of many in your life that as parents, that you'll be able to sort of go like, oh, actually, this isn't working. We need to make this change, for example. So we're going to begin by talking through daytime structuring first. The things that I want you to know about. I'm not going to run through an exact schedule for each month. That would take forever. And some of you are just here for toddlers, for example. But what we sort of want to be looking at is usually your first nap of the day is one of the primary naps, your second nap also, until your little one gets to around 10 months and above. And then they would tend to drop that third nap anytime really from 7 to 9 months. They'll drop that third nap, and that's when they'll shuffle to the 2 naps a day. And then from usually 10 months and above, we sort of tend to aim for 1 decent nap and 1 short nap. Now, there's this whole notion of, do we do the first nap as the lengthy nap? Do we do the second? Which one's better? My whole thing is that, as you can imagine, if your little ones have had essentially 5 naps in their day, at some point, they end up dropping the 5th nap. They end up dropping the 4th nap. They end up dropping the 3rd nap. And so these naps, as these are dropping, tend to shuffle out a bit across the day, right? It makes no sense in my mind why we suddenly cut nap 1 and nap 2 is the one we're working with. So I tend to work with nap 1 and 2 being primary naps. That means aiming for an hour or more on one or either, right? If your little one is taking a good nap 1, don't feel like you've got to cap it because some schedule somebody told you that you had to cut that one short. It's perfectly fine for that first nap to be a longer nap, and then your second nap to also be, an hour or so. Until they get older, they might just take one or the other, but you don't have to feel like you've got to cap it, because to be honest, your second nap is usually the one that's moved out, and that usually drops out. And then your first nap has moved to, say, your 10:30s, 11s, and that's the one that shuffles into that one nap of the day. So that's what we want to put a bit of a focus on, is the nap 1 or 2 being primary, trying to get an extension for at least one of those is a really good idea. So if we can try and get one of those extended, that's great. But that's sort of the aim to begin with. Now I'm going to get into catnapping and things like that. Will you guys give me 1 second? I can hear my dog going crazy. I'm going to go see what's going on. 1 second. Okay, sorry guys. Just making sure. They're like, I thought, are they outside, like out the front? So yeah, so our nap 1 and 2 become our primary naps. They shuffle out, and then eventually, you'll be working with primarily one decent nap in the day and then one short nap. And then usually between 14 to 19 months, they tend to drop to that one nap. Now, one big thing about nap transitions is I don't want you to rush them. Okay. Now, a lot of my families will say to me, my baby's got low sleep needs. They drop their nap sooner than everyone else. They've got low sleep needs, etc. However, so often they don't. I tend to find that the ones who have, like, let's call it poorer sleep habits, tend to drop sleeps way too soon, tend to do way more awake time than what they actually need. Okay. So basically what we want to sort of focus on is essentially with your nap 1 and your nap 2, we want to make sure we keep those for as long as we can. Same with if you're on 4 naps, don't be in a rush to drop to the 3. Now, when you're in the early days with young little ones, it can be so exhausting to have to work on like so many naps a day or just have to factor them in. And it becomes such a like arduous process of like always naps and so many feeds and all the things, right? What I want you to focus on is just not rushing that period of time, because when you can buy your little ones even a week or 2 more age, so let's just say they're 5 months instead of 4.5 months, or they're 7 months instead of 6.5. When you can buy them that, I can promise you the transition to dropping a nap is normally way smoother and doesn't impact their nights as much. Okay. However, if, for example, you've sort of rushed it, you're trying to get them to the lesser naps because that last nap's quite painful, that's when you can then start to get earlier mornings. Suddenly their naps are falling shorter than what they used to, that sort of thing, because they're now getting overtired. And it might not happen when you drop a nap. We'll often get clients who will be like, oh my gosh, my bedtime's turned horrific. I don't know what's happened. And they haven't correlated the fact that they dropped a nap 10 days ago and this overtiredness has built up, and now, everything's starting to fall short. So if you can keep them a little bit longer with the last nap before you drop it, try more awake time. Try using straight into the car pram or carrier. Offer it straight as a contact nap, just to try and get it. It can be a 10 or 15-minute little bridge that supports them getting into bed at a better time. Okay. Now, what you don't want to do when it comes to nap transitions, let's just say your little one's been on 3 naps in the day, right? Suddenly, and bedtime, say, falling at 7:20 because they're on their 3 naps, right? What you don't want to suddenly do is drop this last nap. Let's just say you all of a sudden drop that last nap of the day, and now you've got this stretch to an early bedtime. So let's say, like, oh my gosh, like even if you move these 2 out a bit more, right? You don't want to make a 7:20 bedtime suddenly 6:15. Right? Even though they might be due at that time because of their awake times, you want to make sure when you drop a nap, firstly, that your little one is ready to transition to the lesser naps, but you want to make sure you span the other 2 out well enough, and then you bring bedtime forward slowly. So you'd start with 7 o'clock, for example, right? I'm going to get a different pen, guys. This one's a bit light. And then you'd bring it forward slowly. So I want you to keep that in mind, that you don't want to suddenly drop these naps. And I'd rather you put in a 10-minute kip and make bedtime 7:45, for example, for a period of time. Then you buy another week, and then you start to bring it forward when they can then adjust. Because when your little ones are moving to 2 naps in the day, for example, they have to be able to make close to 3 hours awake time. So you really want to make sure you're looking at, well, how much awake time will my little one need to drop from 5 to 4 naps? Can they make that? If they can't, what can we do? Can we start the day earlier if it's starting later to be able to fit in the 4 naps for a bit longer? Can we cap nap 2 if it's going for 2 hours to an hour and a half so we can fit in a 4th nap? Things like that, just to buy you a bit more time so they're ready for that transition, right? And then off you go with the transition from there. So I hope that makes sense. When they're dropping from 2 to 1 nap or from 1 nap to no nap, that transition can go for a little while. So what you'll normally do is dice. I have been in an absolute game of 1 nap to no nap with my 3.75. So Charlie, I don't usually say 3.75, but just to give you more context, Charlie's 4 in July. So it's not far. So I don't want to say 3.5 because he's a bit over that. And honestly, guys, if he naps for more than 10 minutes, so if we get a 10-minute, and sometimes guys have this up your sleeve, a 10-minute kip when you need to is better than a 30-minute. If you're like, my babe really doesn't need this second nap or really doesn't need this 1 nap in the day because they're 3, but they're just not making it, you can do a 10 or 15-minute kip and see if that buys you enough reboot, but not then puts bedtime at 9. If I give Charlie a 30-minute nap, we are like 9:30 bedtime. And I don't know about you, different when they're newborns, but I can't be having that. So guys, most of what I'm going to be directing today at is 10 weeks and above. 12 weeks and above, but I wanted people in from 10 weeks and above because all of this is what you need to know, basically. So for me, I've done this dance with Charlie, but then if he has the nap, he doesn't go to bed till 9:30, and guess who needs a nap the next day? And you get stuck in this battle. And this can be like at any point, you can, be stuck in this battle. So now that Charlie is 3.5, I'm so confident that he can make it through 3.75. I'm so confident that it's not age inappropriate. If you've got a 2-year-old who's refusing their nap, that's different. There is a 2-year or 22-month, 24-month regression, let's call it. And honestly, it just looks like sudden refusal for bed, sudden refusal for naps. And people are like, oh, they need to drop their nap there too. I'm like, oh, they need a big bed. I'm like, stop, hold the bus. They don't need any of those things. If you can ride it out, you'll get another whole year normally of a nap. Now, from 2 years, 3 months onwards, your babe might, and guys, remember, you can watch this back, okay? I am literally trying to give you as much as I can in a pocket. So if you're like, hold on, slow it all down, just watch this back, take the notes, because before you know, if you can know this stuff in advance, if you're here with an 18-month-old and you can be like, actually, I'm going to bookmark 22, 24 months because there might be a bit of refusal there, and go back to what I've said. Okay. It's really, really important to keep it that way so that you can look forward and change these things. I'm going to talk about what to do when you're hitting these regressive points. So for your toddlers, for example, looking at, are they from 2 years and 3 months onwards? If they start to not want to go in their sleep space, that's not uncommon for a nap. It doesn't mean you don't need to give them a nap. It means that then I would use the car or pram, for example, for a nap. Or just let them have some, a kip in the car, that sort of thing, say from 2.5 onwards. That's very normal. It's very normal that little ones start not wanting to sleep in their cot or bed at 2.5 or just under and above, right? And you don't keep forcing it, because when you keep forcing it, they learn how to get out of it. And then that seeps into the nighttime, pushes everything back, makes it an anxious space. And it's actually quite age appropriate. So that's when you go straight into the car or things like that to get it that way. So when we're looking at nap transitions, we're not rushing it. We're trying more awake time first. We're keeping it for another week or 2 if we can. We're using alternative methods to get them to sleep, to support them for a little bit longer, unless you know it's time. And then, of course, you make that transition, but you make sure those naps are spanned out well, and then bring bedtime forward a bit, but not a huge jump to what they're used to. That's really, really important, okay? Because otherwise they think you're putting them down for another nap at 6 p.m., for example, and they will just fight it, right? So really important. So yeah, Jen, you will absolutely get playback. But I was just explaining earlier that my little girl is how I got into this. She's 12 now, 12 and a half nearly, but she was so severe with reflux and things like that. So that's how I ended up training and getting into this space. But I was a peds nurse before that, hun. So that's what we're going to focus on when it comes to nap transitions, awake times, your nap 1 and 2, keeping those as a primary. You don't have to cut them, super short because a structure told you, and then aiming for this 2-hour midday nap if you've heard of that. Please don't stress about a 2-hour nap. Anything an hour and 15, hour and 20 more means they've put 2 sleep cycles together. That is beautiful. That is a great nap for your little ones. Then you can have those cat naps in the afternoon as you need to as well. Okay. Now, from 2.5 onwards, people ask me, like, how do you know when they're ready to fully drop a nap? And that's what I was saying before. You kind of need to do a dance. There'll be days where you need a nap or second nap, days when you don't need a nap. There'll be, a couple of days where you don't nap, but then they'll need or do the nap. And then, so it's not uncommon for transitions from 2 to 1 or 1 to no nap to take a couple of months of dicing. That's very normal, especially the 1 to no nap. That can take a really decent period of time. In fact, it's only been the last week because my husband is away and I am like, I'm not doing 9:30 bedtime school holidays, entertaining all day, trying to work, trying to do everything, and then having a 9:30 bed. Like, no chance. So I've been like, Charlie, you are on no nap anymore. So the afternoons can get a bit like zesty, but that's okay. We just, outdoor play, that sort of thing, right? Water play, that sort of thing is really important. You'll usually hit this tricky patch in about 2 or 3, and then 1 or 3 to 4. And then once you get through that, they sort of get a bit of a reboot. So it's just hanging in there when that does come the case. Now, some little ones will keep their nap happily until 3.5, even 4 and a bit. If you have a baby who has that higher sleep needs, accommodate it. It's no problems. If they're not napping on kindy days, but they're napping at home, that's perfect. So that's fine. How you know when the bedtime is being affected is what I'm going to move on to next. How you know when to drop a nap and things like that. Because firstly, you always want to have like a reasonable bedtime. So if they're younger, I'd say like 8 would be my latest, unless you've got a newborn. It's quite normal for bedtimes to be closer to 9. However, as they get older, I'd be like 7:45, 8 is where I'd, cut it and then adjust naps from there. And then as they get older, you want to look at their sleep pressure. So this is the next thing. Now, if you are here because your toddler bedtimes are tricky, I need you to pay attention to this. If you are here because your newborn or young baby, 3.5-month-old, for example, or 10-week-old, will not go down for day sleeps, I need you to watch this. So no matter what age, this is the most important part. If you are here because you are getting catnapping, frequent waking, difficult settles, or complete refusal, this is the key. A key. One of the keys. One of the keys. So let me change it to this one, actually. That's what I was going to do. Let me see if this one's a bit darker for you guys to see. So we're going to pretend that this is the awake time for our babe. So we're going to say that they've got, just pretend 2 hours awake time, or it could be that this is your toddler's whole day. Okay? That's their whole day of awake time. We're going to pretend, right? Now, what we're going to look at is in that awake time, essentially when it comes to that awake time, we're going to look at how much of that awake time are they building sleep pressure? Now, a lot of you guys may have heard me talk about this before, but it is so important to go over. If you've got a toddler who's, let's just say, so here's their awake time. Play, 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 right? And then it comes to bedtime, right? But let's just say we've got a toddler who's playing, 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 has 15 minutes of books here, has chilled out milk in bed here, has screen time at dinner here. We can see how much of their awake and play building sleep pressure, building the appetite for sleep is taken out, right? Then we get to bedtime and parents are like, it's like they get a second wind. It's like they've got the zoomies. It takes them hours to fall asleep. Now, before you consider dropping a nap for your toddler or cutting it, I want you to check this first. In their last awake time before bed, are they fully awake? Are they active and engaged? Are they building the pressure for sleep, or are they having entrees before the mains? Are they resting and rebooting? Too much wind down? Crazy, right? Too much chill on 15 books? Sitting back and relaxing, having chill milk and then ditching it whilst they're watching TV, and up they go from there, right? What is impacting their settle? When you've focused on this, that's when you can then go, right, is bedtime now easy or is it still tricky? That's when we'll cap a bit off the nap. So if they're having an hour and a half, you might go an hour 15, things like that, right? So you have to pay attention to this for your babies and your toddlers before you can then move forward with the like capping or thinking, are they just not due a nap, or what's going on? Do they need more awake time at this 2-year mark? Maybe they don't need a nap anymore. You have to look first at their sleep pressure. Now, if you've got, for example, if we had a baby who, let's just say they were having, now I'm going to give you another example. They've got their awake time, right? But in their awake time, I'll just give this one a quick wipe. In their awake time, let's just say this is their awake time. They're supposed to be building up that appetite for sleep. They're having a drowsy feed here. They're having another offering here. They're having extra long feeds than what they need for their age. You can see then, this is why newborns seem to not nap in the day. It's because they're spending most of their nap times on feeds nice and drowsy, right? Which is normal. However, as they start to get to 3 months, if you're looking at making changes to frequent waking, catnapping, etc., you need to first and foremost be focused on what is what is happening in that awake time. Are they building the appetite for sleep? Do we have extra long feeds that they might not need for their age? Do we have multiple offerings going because they've suddenly become a snack feeder? Now, if you're here because you're in a feed to sleep cycle, and your baby, or they'll only feed near sleep, or they're snack feeders or things like that, what is typically happening is that the milky bar is always too open. So when you keep offering, only wait till before bed because you know that they'll have a better feed, things like that. It's like the chicken and the egg. Like, you can't make the change because you're like, oh, they haven't fed enough, so I've got to feed them to sleep. But then this is happening. So instead, I recommend waiting for them to wake up a bit, 15 minutes, offering a feed. If they don't have the best feed, maybe offer half an hour again later, half an hour later again. And then from that, moving on to play and then sleep. But in their awake time, we want to make sure they've got plenty of opportunity to build up that play, to build up that appetite for sleep, to have flat mat time to roll around. We want to build their appetite for sleep. That's what we're aiming to do. So that then when it comes to a settle, they actually have the appetite to do that. That is the same with your toddler bedtimes, guys. If you're here because your toddler bedtimes are dragging out, they've become an absolute rigmarole, you must look at what is happening in the lead up. The other thing with screens, we're having to intercept screens from much younger now because of the detriments that they're doing. But what is also happening with screens is that firstly, they disable your melatonin release, so your drowsy hormone release. The other thing that they do is they stimulate awake hormones. Then on top of that, they give your little ones a rest and reboot. And then to add to it all, they give you a big behavior burst after you turn them off, right? Because when your child's brain is constantly during a screen time section, like ping, 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 with dopamine, and every 15 seconds there's a scene change and there's a crash and there's a da-da-da. Imagine this, and then you're like, okay, now turn it off. Their brain is still in this flurry of this search of stimulation seeking. And that's when you get that behavior. Is it them being ratty, naughty, not listening, silly, pushing like boundaries, niggling at their sister? They're looking for it. They're looking for that next hit, that next bit of stimulation, right? So when we do that right before sleep, that's when you then get that difficult bedtime on top. So as we know, guidelines are, minimal under 3 years. But when you have screens around, I'm totally aware how life goes on. Just try and keep it at least 2 hours away from bedtime. We usually say 3. Okay. So if you've got a toddler, I would recommend that after they get up, they've had their breakfast. If you want to have some morning time instead of screens, do 45 minutes at some point there. If you want to have it mid-afternoon, it might help you get that through that 2 or 3 o'clock slump. And then after that, it's back to outdoor playtime. Have you guys ever, if you've been camping, like when I go away, I'm like the walking dead. Like, I cannot stay awake past 8 o'clock. And the kids are the same, because you're physically out, you're among the elements, you're getting that exposure to the circadian rhythm, you're outside. That's why when they've had big outdoor playtimes, that sort of thing, they tend to sleep way better. When you're camping as adults, you go to bed at like crazy early o'clock, whereas when you're at home, you don't, things like that. So we really want to pay attention and really look at that sleep pressure. in the lead up to bedtime. That's really going to help the whole process, building up that appetite for sleep, that sort of thing. It is really, really important. So if you have a little one that will only feed, I am not having much luck with this screen, with this board situation, but that's okay. It's still working. I hope you guys are still able to follow along. But the next thing, listen, I'm better with sleep than I am with whiteboards. I can promise you this much. So the next thing that we want to focus on is if you're here because you're saying, Tara, but I need to know how to get rid of night waking. I need to know, all the things. Now, I'm going to stay focused one more minute on the toddler bedtimes. You want to make sure you've built up that physical appetite, but you also want to make sure you've really, truly connected with your toddlers, right? So same with our babies. What we want to do in the lead up to bedtime. Now, if your little one is stuck with milk in bed, you might just move it away slowly, okay? So it might be that you start with just moving it 10 minutes before bed, keeping them more awake, 15 minutes before bed, keeping them more awake, that sort of thing, okay? So you can do it ever so slowly and move it away. But what you want to make sure is that you haven't had the multiple offerings because then they won't take it seriously. The snack feeding and distracted feeding is often exacerbated the more we offer. So I'm not saying don't offer your babes enough food, but what I'm saying is be mindful of that constant reoffering, or the 20 minutes trying to offer, move on, play, a little bit more offer, play, move on to a settle from there. If your little one will only feed to sleep, bring it forward ever so slowly and see how that goes for your babes as well. So the next piece is that if you're here because your toddler bedtime suck or your baby bedtime suck, and you're or the nighttime sucks during the night waking, things like that, the next thing that we're going to look at is this sleep associations piece. Now, this is so important. Sleep pressure, awake times, but most people have awake times, pretty well down pat, and then the sleep associations, right? Now, I would say so many of our clients will say often, oh, the bedtime's quite easy. It's the during the night waking, or I can get them to sleep for the nap, but it's the cat nap, the short naps. That's where we must focus on the sleep association, because to be honest, you may or may not be able to get your little ones down easily. However, it's how we're doing it. It's the association. When our little ones turn 4 months, or between 3 to 4 months, what essentially is happening is that their sleep cycles become more consolidated. They become more alert in between. This is just a progression for them. It's actually not a regression, even though it appears to be one. It's a progression to them from essentially being able to moving into the next sleep cycles that are more consolidated, more adult-like. So they come to an alert point to check everything is as it was when they fell asleep, right? It's normal. We all do it, even as adults. The difference is we shouldn't have to wake up, cry because something's missing, panic, and then somebody has to come in and do X, Y, and Z, right? So basically the whole idea is that our little ones begin to wake 2-hourly, frequently, even 3-hourly, short naps, things like that, because typically something is gone, missing, or changed from the lead up or bedtime or the settle than what was at the beginning. So if you dummy, rock, pat, something external, so I have to do something, or something external needs to come into play to get my baby to sleep. It's very different to an association like a sleeping bag or teddy that they have around bedtime. But when you physically have to put them off to bed, or something external has to put them off to bed from there, that is when we tend to get that more frequent waking and the issues with the settles and things like that. Okay, because they've come out of a sleep cycle. So when they say biologically your little ones are supposed to awaken, yes, they are. However, it's not wake, cry, no one gets good sleep, they have to repeat a pattern and then go back off to sleep. That's not the biological attachment need of a child or a toddler. If you've got toddler night waking, this is just as important, because there's every chance you're sitting on the bed at the beginning of the night, or you're lingering around the door, or you're coming back to check a number of times, and then in the nighttime, you're now gone. And the same happens when we are dummy rocking feeding. And the same is said for early morning waking and things like that. Because in the early hours and the second half of the night, your little ones are naturally on lighter surface sleep, which means they come out of a sleep cycle more like of a lighter sleep cycle. So they're more alert, and then it's harder for them to get back off. So if you've got early morning waking, if you've got problematic waking more so in the second half of the night or from 9 or 10 p.m., that's where you really want to look at, okay, what is their associations around sleep? And that's what changes catnapping too. Because if your little one can't initially settle from wide awake to sleep, how can we expect that they're going to know how to resettle from wide awake after a short night back to sleep, right? So that is your first key change that we want to look at making. What are their associations and how can we change those? Now, associations aren't inherently bad. In fact, there is no right or wrong with sleep, right? But there is it working or is it not working? Is it serving the family as a whole, including like your partnership between you and your partner and your sibling? Is it serving? Is it sustainable? Or not. And that's the difference, because for some families, they can rock, pat, feed to sleep, and their baby sleeps all night. They're nonchalant. They're not that fast. They're a bit sleepy, like they're happy to do that. For other babies, you do it and they are like ping, ping, ping. And then people will say, oh, they're FOMO, or maybe it's teeth. Maybe it's this or that. Now, people start looking at teething from 3 months onwards because suddenly they're drooling. Suddenly they can coordinate hand to mouth. But the thing is that this is just developmental as well. Some little ones will get teeth young, but not many, not as many. Most will get them from 6 months and above. But the main point is that even if your little one is teething, it doesn't mean that all of these frequent or inconsistent nights are due to that. In fact, dentists will say there's some minor inflammation that happens, usually in a couple of days. Let me just get a drink, guys. I've woken up with like razor blades in my throat this morning, so you have to excuse my voice. So what we want to do is look at, well, actually, are we supposed to be medicating? Are we supposed to be thinking it's teething for the next 3 years? Because that's how long they're going to teeth for. And then you end up in this such a like uncertain trap. Like you're like, maybe it's teeth. I don't know. I'll give them some medicine. And it's so much, you just question everything. There's so much doubt. When you get on top of sleep, you will remove so much of that questioning. You will be turning less and less to teething possibilities. You will notice when it's specific. To let you in on something, when my daughter, I was a pediatric nurse beforehand. I'd worked with babies my whole teen and adult life. When she was 4 months old, what was the turning point for me was that she was unwell and she was always up anyway. She was always an unsettled baby. She cried a lot anyway. I didn't actually recognize how unwell she was. I thought she had a cold. But it turns out she had a UTI that had gone to her kidneys. That's how like behind the mark I was. Because at that point, obviously I was a first-time mom. Like wasn't even thinking about a UTI. But at the same time, she was so unsettled anyway. She was always crying. So same with this teething trap, like you just don't know. And so we ended up in hospital for 3 or 4 days. She ended up getting 10 UTIs in her first year, so 9 more after that. And when we got home from the hospital, I was like, this is crazy. Like, I need some help. And that's when I got a sleep consultant. My friend recommended it to me. And honestly, from then on, I never skipped a beat because she was a settled baby. She would sleep well. And so suddenly when she wouldn't, I was like, something's off here. I'd be onto it. No more hospital, like we'd have to sometimes get like intramuscular for bad UTIs, but no more like what had happened. And so that's what I want for you guys. I want you to have this certainty around your little one's sleep to be like, well, actually, am I just in this constant blame game? Like, am I just so lost in this? Because when you get on top of these sleep associations, which I'm going to explain soon, it makes a big difference. So if there is something cueing your little one's sleep time and time again, Travis, I know you're here for early morning waking, so I'm going to include that in this. You must look at, firstly, has my little one got the right awake time before bed? So frequent waking, cat napping, early mornings. This is really important, and toddler bedtimes. At 2, when it suddenly goes off track, move closer to 5.5 to 6 hours awake time. For example, sorry guys, one sec. Then once you think, yeah, okay, I've extended the awake time. I know I'm on the right awake time. I'm building up that sleep pressure. I know I've got that piece covered. The other piece that is so important, especially for our toddler bedtimes, is connection. Have you saturated them in connection? Have you had no screens after daycare so that they can actually be with you and like come back to you, recollect your kid after daycare or after school, to make sure that you've got that time with them to fill their cup, to active listen, to immerse them in physical affection, things like that. Because if you don't do it then, they will seek it at bedtime, right? Same with your babes. Have we had that time to hang out, that sort of thing, right? So you want to basically look at that lead up to bedtime, the awake time. Then when you want to move away from associations, what I recommend with feed to sleep associations is that you don't change it all straight away. So you might, for example, look at, if you've got a little one who's only on a small awake time, you might not feed them after last nap. Let's just say they've only got 2 hours. You might offer the feed 45 minutes before bedtime is due. They probably won't take it because they're like, what are you doing? I'm not asleep. This isn't my bedroom. Like, we're not sleep, but you offer. Don't keep reoffering. Have a bit more play. Offer one more time just out from bedtime. Keep them wide awake. They take what they take, have play. If you're worried and they're on solids, you can give them a bit more solids, and then you move on to the bedtime. You start all changes from the beginning of the night. Even if it's about catnapping or early morning waking, you must look at, have I got the right awake time? Sometimes early morning waking is because your little ones are too tired or have too much of a big stretch to an early bedtime. So you want to move that midday nap out a bit to make sure that then they fall asleep a bit later, but not a big stretch. Okay. The goal is for early morning waking is not overtired, not feeding near sleep, and their ability to self-settle or resettle. Then making sure that, sorry guys, you aren't enticing the early morning waking as well. So we want to keep a focus on those things. And keep that in mind when looking at early morning or frequent waking. So you'd move that association back a bit, then you'd have playtime. Now, my ideal schedule before a bedtime, if they're on solids, is solids at some point after the last nap. If they're on 3 and a bit more awake time hours, you might have milk, then solids, then another milk 45 minutes before bed. But if they're only on 2.5 or up to 3, you might wait a little bit after they wake from last nap, then you'd have solids, then you'd have bath. Then you'd have if you want to do bath, you don't have to, guys. Stringent lead ups to bedtimes are not the be all and end all. Then you'd have a feed 45 minutes out from bed or 40 minutes out. Then you'd have half an hour of playtime. And I would just have that as play and connection time more than anything else. So that's what we want to keep an eye on in that lead up to bedtime, is building it up, moving that association away slowly. Guys, you're going to have to excuse me for 1 sec. I'm just going to see if I can get something for my throat. Sorry, 2 seconds. Alrighty, hopefully I can hang in there. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this. Of all days, I literally woke up this morning and I was like, my throat is like on fire and got like 50 razor blades in it. So what we then want to do is then we want to have that feed awake. Now, then what we do is have this playtime in the lead up to bedtime. Then what we're looking at is how we can teach our little ones to be in their sleep space from wide awake off to sleep without those external measures. Okay. Now, during any change, even with your toddler bedtimes, we've got that connection time in the lead up. We've built up that sleep pressure. We've got kind but firm boundaries. Remember, with your toddlers or 2-year-olds and above, you're making sure that you're there for them, you're connecting with them. But if you need a boundary held, you're holding that firm no without all the negotiation and all of the dialogue. You can explain, but then allowing them to have their really big feelings, because they're allowed to not love the boundary that we put in place. And we're allowed to hold it with kindness, but sturdiness. Okay. If you start to get into too much negotiation, bargaining, things like that, it becomes black and white. It becomes gray area. You're a sturdy no, for example, or you're a sturdy explanation as to why, and they can have their big feelings, but it doesn't mean it changes or shifts so that's your lead up with your toddlers, is that connection piece, the sleep pressure piece, that build up, the right awake time, especially with 2-year-olds adjusting and needing more awake time, sturdy boundaries in the lead up to bedtime. You're in control. They've got a sturdy leader they can trust. If you keep letting things lax in the lead up to bedtime, they can't trust you. And guess what they then need to do? They need to take control of bedtime because you've let them push too many doors that they didn't want to open. So, kind and sturdy is so important with our toddlers. When we're changing baby associations, we're sturdy. I know that it's going to cause some discomfort when we make change. When we're first putting our little ones down wide awake, they've had the right awake time, we've had connection and playtime, they've built up sleep pressure, they haven't been drowsy on feeds. Then you've got to then look at, right, now what are we going to do when it comes to how we're going to get them to sleep? So for our babes, it might be that you're staying right by the cot, for example, and you're there supporting them. You're there offering that reassurance. You might be in and out of the room. You might, for younger babes, you could do a pick up, put down. For older little ones, they tend to get very worked up by that. But it is just about being there for them, showing response and reassurance, but not taking over the settle where you end up always putting them off to sleep somehow. And also accepting that when we first make changes, we're there for them, we're responsive, we're reassuring, but we're not in a pattern of thinking we need to fix them to sleep or fix them in the exact same position or making sure. I mean, of course, if they're not safe, that's different. But we're not trying to overdo it. We're actually more importantly there to reassure ourselves, like to reassure our babes and to regulate ourselves whilst they adjust to that change. Okay, so essentially what we're doing is we're saying, to begin with, no change feels comfortable, right? We can do it so supportive. You might wean some things. If your little one is using a dummy and it's become so problematic, but they're also feeding and rocking, you might get rid of the dummy for 3 days, feed and rock to sleep, feed and rock back to sleep, but no dummy. Then you might say, okay, the feed's not a biggie, so let's move that away a bit, but keep rocking to sleep and rock to sleep for another 3 to 5 days. And then move to the in-cot settle from wide awake. So you can also do that weaning piece first if your little one has a number of props. But otherwise, we've built up the sleep pressure. We haven't got them drowsy. We've had connection, big smooch, big cuddle, into the cot they go, or into their bed they go. That's when we're then adding that reassurance, the response, regulation. Our regulation is key. If they have a parent who is frantic during a settle, they will not settle. If they have a parent who is there for them wholeheartedly, but I'm okay and you're okay. I know that this change feels uncomfortable. You're allowed to have your big feelings about this change. It feels uncomfortable. Their reptilian brain is like, just do what we know, stay with what worked, even though it wasn't good for us. The brain hates change. You could literally be in the worst relationship ever, but leaving feels like death, right? Because change is uncomfortable, but it doesn't make it wrong. And this is the thing where society is in this thing that like everything should feel comfortable. If it doesn't feel right, it mustn't be right. But it's not actually the case, because at what cost? At the cost of your toddler being put in front of movies all day because you're stuck in a room, at the cost of your marriage or relationships, at the cost of your mental health. The number one determinant for a child's outcome is maternal well-being. So please know that your sleep and you matter, and it's a matter of choosing that and being like, do you know what, babe? I'm going to have to feel uncomfortable many times as a parent. When you're 3 and you're asking something, when you're 12 and you want social media, all the things. And it's not going to feel better just because it's not sleep. It feels shit to hold these boundaries and to do things that feel uncomfortable, but it doesn't make it wrong. So you need to make that decision. And then we're supporting, we're reassuring, we're responding, but we're not dysregulated. And it doesn't mean that it's like, yay, but it means that we're offering that support. Now, paying attention. What is making it better? What is making it worse? With your toddlers, can you sit off the bed for a night? Can you sit middle of the room for a night? But you need to have a boundary. I'm happy to be here, sweetie, but you need to lay quietly. That's my boundary, right? For my toddlers, for example, if you're not going to lay quietly, I'm going to step out for a moment, just as an example, right? Come back in. Right. Jay, I'm right here, but I need you to lay quietly, and I'm going to sit here, sweetie. You're still mucking around. If you keep mucking around, you can't just sit there and with a toddler or return them to the bed 26 times a night. You have to have that boundary in place. I'm happy to be here and support you fully on the thing of I'm here, etc. Right? Then what I would look at what method is serving our little ones. Is the method of being there really helping? How can we get to a point where you are doing less? How can we get to you to a point where you say goodnight, big smooch, and step away? Because it's only once they do that initial self-settle that they will typically then, for our babes who are holding onto associations, get better with the resettles. Right? So the feed's slowly being moved away from sleep. They're wide awake. They go down wide awake. That's when they start to get these longer stints, because then we manage the nighttime waking with the same method unless they're due for a feed. So normally, when it comes to, for example, normally when it comes to our little ones, when they're 4 months and under, when they're 12 weeks and under, you're doing what you need to do. When they become 3 to 5 months, 1 to 2 night feed is normally normal. When they're 4 to 5 months and above, they're normally having 1 night feed, right? So 5 months, especially and above, I'd be aiming for 1 night feed. Let me just see what this is, guys. 2 secs. I'd be aiming for 1 night feed, and above. So after that 1 o'clock point, I'd be like, right, now we're in for one night feed and beyond. Whereas for the other wakings, you'd work on that resettle. So you'd go back to that resettle piece for the other night wakings, okay? And so that is then when they are able to start getting those resettles a bit more, for example, that's when you'll start to see that they're then able to resettle for a nap. When they go down awake for a nap without you doing a certain thing, they're then able to transition between those sleep cycles, because guess what? They're no longer sleeping with one eye open. They're no longer a FOMO baby so much. They're no longer every single noise they wake up to, because they're getting into deeper and better sleep cycles. When they're not sleeping with one eye open, that something is going to change or missing or gone. That is the big difference. That's what then allows these early morning wakings to dissipate and these extensions. If you've got a little one who's, having a feed at 1 o'clock or 12 o'clock, for example, 11, they're more likely to wake in the second half. So if your babe's 5 months and above and medically okay, that's when you might look at, okay, I'm going to do a resettle at 11 or 12, for example, and get them into that second half of the night. Then from that second half of the night, that's when you're going, either to do a feed or back to a resettle if they've already had a feed and they're not due. And then you start your day with moving closer to a feed, play, sleep. Now, if your little one is used to feeding to sleep, you'd move the feed away from the nap, like to an hour away from the nap, not suddenly to a feed, play, sleep, right? That might be too much. They might still need that top up an hour before a nap as well. But both of those feeds are wide awake, so they're keeping that sleep pressure, so they have the appetite. So when you're doing any teaching of this, you can be in the room with the goal of moving out and lesson. You can be in and out, but pay attention to, am I regulated? Am I going in sturdy and strong, like kind? Am I allowing them to have their feelings about it, but still offering that reassurance? Is what I'm doing making them better or worse? Continuously laying a little one down where they stand up really pisses them off if you didn't notice. Let them stand. Rub their leg through the side as you sit there. Just give them a moment. It's all right, sweetie. Pat the mattress. Put a lullaby on your phone. Give them a shush. Don't always be holding them down, trying to hold their bum and pat them, things like that. They will lay down when they're ready. So is what I'm doing throughout this settle time, making it better or worse at that point. That is really, really important. Then you'd reapply that resettle unless it is feed time. And so they're consistently learning, well, they're here for me, but they're not doing that role anymore. Well, maybe they can learn that sleep is their own, because all this is that they come to a certain point, something's gone, missing, or changed, and they need to get back to sleep every 2 hours, for example, or to get to sleep, it's a feed. You're simply changing a pattern, and it is a learn pattern. That's why for some it's dummies, for some it's a car trip, for some it's mum, not dad, for some it's feeding, for some it's rocking, because it's learned. It's not an attachment checkpoint. This frequent waking is not an attachment checkpoint. They are attached. They are in loving homes. Attachment is a 24-hour process over many years ahead. You do not have to return a piece of plastic to your baby every 2 hours to show them that you are attached and responsive. Okay? Babies who sleep beautifully, does that mean they're missing attachment? They're not missing attachment. they're there. Everything's okay. In fact, it's probably stronger in many ways because they're all rested, and babies can cope better when they're rested, right? And that is what we're looking at. We're looking at what are these learned patterns, because yes, they're supposed to awaken biologically, awaken, not awakening, where then they cry, call out, you have to come in, repeat, back off to sleep, cry, call out, you have to repeat, back off to sleep. That's the difference. And there is nothing that says that attachment is based on your response every 2 hours throughout the night, or whatever else. You want to make sure with your early morning wakings you're not encouraging them to get up early. I would stay with a resettle until at least 5:30, for example. Anytime from that they can get up, but at least 5:30. I'd make sure they're not getting up and getting milk into your bed or getting screens. I would make sure they're not too overtired, or they don't, especially at 18 months, they don't have a nap from 11 till 1 p.m. and then they're going down at 6 or 6:30. It's too much of a big stretch before early bedtime. Can we make the nap a bit later? Yes, I know it's a bit of a stretch. And then make bedtime a bit later, but it's not being because you've now got 7.5 hours awake time before bedtime. Are they feeding close to sleep? Because when they are feeding to sleep, rocking to sleep, if it's working well, do not change a thing. If it's not, you need to look at, okay, is this early morning waking? Are these cat naps? Are these frequent wakes? Because they are reliant on an external measure to get to sleep. They're getting drowsy. A lot of people are very disillusioned. They're like, it's not my dummy, or they're not using anything to get to sleep. And then I look and they're having feeds right before sleep. They might not be asleep on it, but it's their cue for right before sleep. They're getting them nearly asleep and they're like, oh, they kind of shuffle and they're a bit awake. So then it doesn't count. It does. They're still got that lingering, the strings are still there for those attachments. So looking at that is really, really important. And with your toddler bedtimes and your toddler settles, that attachment piece, the sleep pressure, the right awake time, that connection piece is really, really important. It makes a huge difference, okay, in that lead up. So when they then have a short nap, what we want to do, and this is regardless of regressions or teething, guys, okay, you can absolutely change this during a regression, no problems. I do it every single day. It's like I say to people, because everyone feels like they've got the one baby that I can't work with. They've got the one baby that can't be fixed. And guys, we literally have, you'll get an email about we have an entire membership with a baby and toddler full video program. We're in there every day answering questions, Monday to Friday. I'm in there live, like answering questions as well, me live every single week, for $79 a month. Like, it's crazy. So like, if you literally like, okay, Tara, I need the specific, I need this minute to this minute to this minute, like jump in there or work one-on-one. If you think I just need troubleshooting, I need you to take the guesswork out, you just tell me exactly what I'm doing, then do a one-on-one, for example, because that's where you're going to get that like broken down for your babe, for your specific circumstance, right? But this is fixable. Okay. And there is absolutely, like, I would die on the hill of, there is no benefit to just staying in constant sleep deprivation, because sometimes you don't even realize how much it's impacting everything until my families get it sorted and they're like, oh my God, like I'd lost my soul. Like I was so snappy. I was so sure I was just surviving, not really present in my parenthood, right? Which is what we want to, we want, you guys to have. So really paying attention to those lead ups, the awake times, what they're associating. And then when it comes to the catnapping piece, have I got the right awake time? Here's a few things I want you guys to take note on. If your babe wakes, particularly early in the morning, they might need a little less awake time. If they wake later, they might need a little bit more. If your babe wakes from a short nap and they're crying straight away, 30-minute nap, crying straight away, there's every chance they might need a little less awake time before that nap. So try 10, 15 minutes less. If they wake and they're whinging, they're on and off, they're okay, I want you to try adding a little bit more. Maybe even if they're just happy, add 10 minutes more awake time and see if that helps. So that if they wake between 30 to 50 minutes, but they're okay, they might need a little bit more awake time. If your baby's bedtime is due late, do less awake time. If less than what they might be on. So let's just say they're on 2 hours. and their bedtime is suddenly like they've had a last little kip and now their bedtime's due at like 8 o'clock, you might just make it 7:45, an hour 45, because it might be too much to do the full awake time before a later bedtime than they're used to. If they're going to have a particularly early bedtime, go to a higher awake time. So if they're on normally 2.5 hours, you might do 2 hours 45 to 3 hours max, but maybe 2 hours 45, just to bring that bedtime back a little bit and to make sure that they've had enough awake time after essentially, or when it's going to be an earlier bedtime. So we want to sort of focus on that as well. Now, I want to get to some questions. So ask away. I will absolutely be sending an email. It will talk about like I will send a guide out, so a daily baby guide for you guys to take a look at. I will also, it'll have that offer for the $79 a month whole membership. And if you want, if you're like, no, I need more than that, just reach out to me, info@gentlesleep.com.au, because that's where we can work on that one-on-one piece. But this is fixable. It is changeable. I know that you may have been told that your baby is FOMO, teething, regressions, all the things. That is a very long path to stay on, right? So so your 6-month-old to settle in the cot, Jess, that's exactly what I just spoke about. Starting from the beginning of the nighttime is where you change sleep habits, not from the naps. Even if it's catnapping that you want to resolve, I would work on self-settling from the beginning of the night and then teaching your little one to resettle so eventually they can resettle themselves. So you might start in the room full hands on, like full support, and then you might be lessening that so they learn that piece of being able to settle themselves, because that's what then they can reapply when it comes to the short naps, right? The short naps, you give them the opportunity to go back to sleep, but you're not stuck in a dark room for an hour. You might give them 15 minutes, and if they're not going back, get them up. Because short nap resolving is looking at, are they over or under tired? And you can tell by what I just spoke about, by if they're crying or wake up okay. So looking at that. Or is it that we need to apply the self-settle piece and they need to learn that, then, they're able to resettle for those naps. Yeah. Yeah. So, Chloe, I would check, does your 15-month-old have the right structuring in the day? So I would really go back and just take a look at that structuring. Your babe might still need 2 naps a day, for example, but second nap just 10 minutes, but you could just look at that structuring. The other thing is that because your little one won't settle for dad, but will settle for dad, but not for you, I would look at, is your feed falling close to sleep before bed for the night? Or is your little one used to you doing a feed back to sleep and you need to stay with a resettle, for example? Yeah. So Travis, what time does your little one start the day, Travis? What time is your early morning waking though? Yeah. Yeah. So Travis, then I would look at yeah, so your babe, Travis, has too much of a big stretch before bedtime. So I would be either doing a 10-minute car kip at 8 to 8:30 to buy you some time in the morning to get the nap out till like say 12. But the nap, like I think you're in an overtired stretch. So basically waking early, stretch to the nap isn't going too long because they're stretched, and then stretch to the bedtime when waking early, right? So I would try a little kip at say 8:30 in the car, just a 10-minute kip, then a nap at 12. Hopefully that'll help buffer and get a decent nap, and then bedtime alternate. I want you to try somewhere between 6:30 and 7 o'clock. But it is about, I think your little one just needs a bit more time. I think they're just adjusting into this one nap as well, and they're just not coping with all the big stretches. Yeah, so 30-minute waking, that, David, is all about what I spoke about. Your babe has got a prop. There is something that they are relying on. It might be you holding contact naps, that sort of thing. You can obviously get everything checked out. I would go back to, what is it that they're associating with falling asleep? From the beginning of the nighttime, feed 30 minutes before bed, wide awake, play, and then look at self-settling. That piece is not, how do I stop the 30 minutes waking? It's, how do I teach my babe from the beginning of the night sleep? It's a re-remembering. Your babes are all born to know how to sleep, like to sleep. It's autonomic. They can do it, right? It's a learning of what we begin to take over that then becomes the problem. So how can we reteach them how to go to sleep and settle off to sleep, right? That reteaching them that they have the ability to sleep without the need of the external measures. If you're getting 30-minute waking, I wonder, David, do you guys have a dummy as well? So I would be looking at, if you are co-sleeping and you've got a dummy, maybe you try one or the other, not having both for a period of time. You leave the dummy, but try cot settling. And then you work on some actual self-settling, right? Because that 30-minute waking, that is so detrimental to all of you guys. It's totally not sustainable. And it's fixable. That's the most important piece. So looking at that piece of it's not how we manage the nighttime, it's how we manage that initial bedtime and then move forward from there. Yeah. So, Catherine, your babe might have an initial. I want you to check because a lot of times when people think their little ones are self settling, they might not always be. And I'm not saying yours is not, but I just want you to check. Are you sure that the feed isn't falling too close? Or even if they're not feeding, to sleep, right? Are you sure that they're not getting drowsy on that feed still? Do you know what I mean? They're not in the day, just relaxing on the feed, glassy eyes, that sort of thing, because that'll still be problematic during the night. So I want you to check that. Then what I want you to check is how you manage your resettles, because some babes will self-settle at the beginning. It's not as common. For a lot, they still do have something that they're using. But for some who are self-settling and still waking 2 hours, normally there's still a lingering association there. So I do want you to check that, right? Is there something that's lingering there that they're still holding on to? And if not, how can we go through the night with applying a resettle method that offers support but not fixing back to sleep, and then lessening that over time to the point where you do get to that in and out, stage, for example, because that's how they'll then learn that resettle throughout the night time. Yeah. So, David, yeah, I knew you had a dummy because 30-minute waking is normally dummy induced. So I would break this down and look at what are all of our sleep props, guys. You might be like, I've only got one. You might be like, I've got four. If it's your toddler, you might be like, I'm sitting on the bed. Write it down. Right, I've got these three. Which one could I get rid of first because it's not as much? Okay, I could get rid of the dummy but start rocking, for example. Keep rocking. Do that for a few days. I would minimize those things first and then go into cot settles from the beginning of the nighttime, right? Yes. So your 11-month-old Miss Alexis needs to learn that self-settle piece, especially now at 11 months. It is so time, yeah. And also, guys, guess what happens? In the second half, we've done this battle with them all night, right? Second half of the night, guess what? Your babes, and especially 3 to 4 onwards, your babes are in a naturally lighter surface sleep. So now they become awake in their next awake bit, and now they're wide awake. And it's so hard to get them back to sleep, which is what is the early morning waking often when it comes to sleep associations, right? So you're exactly right, Alexis. You can't get them back to sleep after then. It's so much harder. But the key is not how you manage that. It's managing this from the start that helps them get into better sleep cycles. It almost should be a harmony, right? There's studies that show the difference between a babe who is settling into their sleep cycles, it's a rhythm, it's a drift, right? As opposed to this, broken sleep cycles. And then come 3 and 4 in the morning, we're like, oh my God, we're stuck, right? So I want you guys to keep that in mind, that you have to work on this in order to do this. You can't just put out fires here and there. It's an overall change of dependence. It's an overall relearning and a remembering for your baby that, hold on, I don't need to wake up every 2 hours and cry because they can go to sleep, right? Now, here's what I want you guys to know. There is help, there is support. How many nights if you're doing this, you should really see changes within a few nights, let's say 3 to 4 nights, right? If you're getting excess crying, some people come to us and they've been crying for 2 hours. I'm like, oh my gosh, no. There is something that is off in the lead up, the awake times, or the approach. You're making it worse by doing this or that. We'll go through and pinpoint things and be like, let's do this instead. Because for some babes, a pick up, put down is so bothering to them. For some babes, they actually do better when you're in and out of the room every few minutes. For some babes, that parents are trying to get them to sleep nearly and then trying to pull away. That's such a tease. You're literally pulling the rug from under them. Instead, I'm here. It's okay. I'm solid. I'm right here, sweetie. It's no nice time. Right? I'm here. Shh. I'm here. I'm regulated. All is okay. I'm okay and you're okay. I'm okay. You're okay, Baba. Right? There's such a difference. You can feel it. You can feel it in the screen, as opposed to a frantic, messy settle where you're nearly getting them to sleep, but you're not trying to do it. So you pull your arms away at the last minute. We've all been there. Try one thing, hubby comes in and does a totally different thing. Like, everyone needs to be on the same page. Guys, I can't apologize enough for my disruptions. Bloomin' heck. But yeah, so we really want to focus on that. We want to focus on this regulated piece of reassurance that's not playing the role anymore, but still supporting them and then weaning that. That's where we make the big difference. So here's the thing, David. I get this question every time. It's the one question I can't answer, because if you're working with us, I will tell you exactly how long to try things for. If you're not, I don't say, oh, have them upset for 30 minutes and then do X, Y, and Z, right? Because it depends what you're doing. It depends what approach. It depends how you're managing it. It depends if you've got the right awake times, like all of that. But what I would say is that I would you should be seeing changes within a matter of days, and the settle should be getting shorter, and you shouldn't be into these like hour and a bit long settles, none of that stuff. Okay. So, Melissa, I would try a bit more awake time. If your little one is crying like now suddenly on sleep times, I would also keep it mixed up. Don't do the same thing every time before bedtime. Now, guys, if you've got toddlers who are having sleep issues, please, for the love of God, make their bedtime routine nice and fun. Like, hide their teddy and play hide and seek before they brush their teeth, or say, let's brush our teeth and I've hidden your teddy. Let's go do that next. Let's have this book time, at this point instead, like mixing things up, keeping it nice and engaging, keeping it playful, keeping it like connected is the key. Not having a boring, stringent, right, step to step. This is a shitty step to step to get to boring bedtime. Like, nobody wants that. They're not going to be like, yeah, I can't wait to brush my teeth, get my pajamas on, like like to get to bed. So we need, and some babes thrive on it, but for a lot of toddlers, they would love for you to come and bring the toothbrush to their dinosaurs while they're playing and pretend to brush their dinosaurs' teeth and things like that, right? Like, they would love for you to go and have dinner outside on the patio or whatever, and have a little picnic. Like, so really mixing things up and focusing on that connection time is really important. So Melissa, sorry I digress, but in your lead up to bedtime, mix it up. Change what they're doing. Don't do the same pattern. Don't sing the same song if they're now getting upset. Add a bit more awake time. Check that sleep pressure piece, that circle. Lots of different play. Then it's a quick night and into bed from there. Yeah, no. So, Brittany, I actually wouldn't change too much. I think you've got to stay with your 3 naps without a doubt. And actually, I think, making sure that you don't have too much of a stretch before bedtime is going to be your key. Yeah, do not go to 2 naps anytime soon, hun. Yeah, so Demi, you would essentially, removing a feed to sleep overnight, you could go to a rock 100% if they'll take that, but then eventually move from that. You don't want to just swap a prop. You want to make sure that you're moving from one thing to get to the other. You know what I mean? So that you eventually get to wide awake and down for the self-settle piece. So guys, we have ways that we can work together on these things. We essentially have online programs and membership where we have 2 seconds. I'm just going to shut this door. We have a full baby and toddler sleep program in there. We have My Brain in AI. So if you're stuck and it's like 6 p.m. and we're not there to answer the questions, you can pop it into there and I'll give you the response through AI. Following Sit Safe guidelines always, guys. We have essentially support in there every day. Our consultants are in there answering the questions Monday to Friday. I'm doing lives in there each week. The video program has printables, PDFs, how-tos for everything that you want to resolve. Or otherwise, we have the option to work one-on-one, and the one-on-one is incredible. It means that you have a full consult with myself or one of my team who is like literally like so amazing. They've been doing it for years. And then we have like a full initial consult that's either in home or phone. We email a plan and then we call you every day for 2 weeks. Every day we're like, right, can you do this? Or how'd they go? Or yeah, change this, change that. And every day for 2 weeks except for Sundays. So it is so thorough. Yeah, if you want to work together, definitely let me know. And I will get some emails out to you guys just on that and the guide. I'll make sure I get the guide for you. So yeah, I hope that that made a lot of sense for you guys. I really hope that, especially with your toddlers, you're keeping those connected bedtimes, lots of play times, minimal screens, the kind and firm boundaries. And then with your babes, we're really looking at that sleep to pressure piece, what they're associating with sleep, the remembering and the reteaching. Even when it might initially feel uncomfortable, it doesn't make it wrong, it makes it new. So I'm sending you guys so much love. I know that most of you are probably in the thick of it right now. So big love, and I'm here if you need anything. Thanks, guys.